Greetings, Internet world. You're in the Beat Sessions. I am your host, Mitchell Weary. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to have a very special guest in from Oberon Rose. Tommy Oberon, welcome into the show, man. How you doing tonight?
Hey, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you making time. We were just talking about leading this in that it's a little late out there in Nashville where you're at right now. So I appreciate you taking some time late in the evening.
Yeah, no problem.
So we're just going to jump right into this. We're talking about your new record, The Sun Stood Still. You put that out about a little over 2 months ago. Your partner, Rebecca, was kind enough to hit me up, and we've been emailing back and forth. So I just want to say thank you again. I'm really glad that she took the time to reach out to me and that I've really enjoyed diving into your catalog. For those who are viewing right now, subscribers of the channel, just give them an idea of what your sound typically, like, I guess, is generally like. And with this new record, because I know you guys try to do something with every project, like, what was the goal with this new album?
So the goal is always to try to make it a little different than the last one, you know. I wanted to kind of refine the production a little bit, not necessarily in making it like cleaner or something, but just refining our sound, I guess. Making it a little more definitive, a little bit more of, sort of unique to ourselves. That was my main objective here, was to really just kind of make it more signature to what we do, whatever it is that kind of sets us apart. And it's kind of elusive. I don't really know what it is, but I just try to, make, I just try to define things, I guess, is a way to say it. I just try to make it more defined and kind of specific in a way.
All right. Are you familiar with Orson Scott Card, the Ender's Game series?
No.
So it's a sci-fi series that I've been jumping into, but I was reading the introduction on the main novel, Speaker of the Dead. It follows Ender's Game. But in the introduction, he talks about that. He talks about the difficulty of writing that book and how, given everything he'd done in his career up to that point, it was something different that he was trying to do, something that he'd never done before. And I just, not for writers, but I think any artist in general, with every new project that you set out to accomplish, the idea is to do something that challenges you, that you don't think that you're capable of doing, in a way of proving that you can. What would you say about this new project? Like, what about that kind of resonates with you, as far as, because I know that you handle the production aspects of things, the engineering. What set of challenges that you hadn't faced prior to this record did you find yourself dealing with when you were putting together The Sun Stood Still?
To be honest, this one, in a way, had the least challenges. If you could believe it. I mean, so it's our 5th album, and I've sort of, with each album, I have made an effort to try to make the process easier than the last one, because I wear many hats, as you mentioned there. So as the songwriter, in terms of music and melodies, and then arranger for all the parts, I play most of the instruments on the record. I am a horrible drummer, but I compose drum parts in the demo stages, like just basic outlines, and then I work with a drummer to make them, more, natural drum. I just produced a drummer to sort of make them more natural, so it's important that kind of workflow becomes easier for me, because it's a lot of things to do. And so when I started recording my own music, years ago was done on, you know, little 4-track cassette players and stuff like that. So I kind of want to. That was always a pretty simple process because there's really not much. You don't have that many choices, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of. My goal has always been to kind of make it as it'll never be as simple as that, but make it kind of a workflow similar to that where it's less about technical stuff and I can just kind of focus on the creative parts, and all the technical stuff is just like, oh, okay, I got to press this button. You know, I don't have to worry about, oh, why am I not getting sound? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's like the main thing. So for this record, I've kind of gone through a lot of those trials and errors over the past records, and 2 records ago, which was Holographic Blues. That one was the hardest record I ever made, just because there was so many obstacles to overcome in terms of getting it started. Even, I mean, I had the song, we had the songs, but it was just there was a lot of obstacles in the way of getting started on that project. So ever since that one, I was like, okay, I really have to focus on getting this process streamlined so I have an easier time doing it and it doesn't drain me of all energy, and you know, it makes it more just fun to do, you know what I mean, with less stress involved, and it's just a forward process rather than you know, getting hung up on things. So it was the easiest because all the drums were done here in my studio. So that the capturing the drums is always the first. It's like sort of like the most important part of the beginning of the process of recording, because you know the drum sound is pretty much everything on the record. You know, like everything rests on that. So if it's a horrible drum sound, you know, you don't have much to work with. You know what I mean? So
What
you know,
I mean, it's so funny, like talking about you know, that specific tone and the complications with just trying to like navigate production software and everything. I feel like it's huge these days. It's pretty easy to make music, but it's also pretty easy to tell that it's a computer. It's not anything that's authentically human
yeah,
behind what's going on. And there are so many, like you play, like I haven't had that much experience with production software. It's something I'd like to get into more. But I mean, some of those options that you have, I mean, you listen to the beats and they just sound so electronic and so just fake. They don't capture the real authentic rock and roll feel that I think you guys are going for, not just on this record, but throughout your catalog.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I basically use the software as almost like a tape machine. You know, I just think of it like that. I don't use samples, and I don't resample drums really. I do. I'll capture like acoustic samples of the drums before we record it. Like um, uh, I'll have my drummer like hit the snare a couple of times so I can capture it alone, just in case there's an issue um, where I don't know, some random issue that the snare needs to be corrected for some reason on a fill or some small part or something. I'll have something as a backup to do, but I don't use any electronic samples or anything like that. Everything we do is still like not acoustic, but electric and acoustic instruments. Aside from the only exception to that rule is I do use software synths or virtual instruments, just
Mhm.
because I don't have a wide variety of vintage synthesizers, so that's the easiest way for me to get it. Like, for instance, like the Mellotron or something,
Oh yeah.
which would be extremely expensive to have. They do have modern ones that are like just regular, like it's just a regular keyboard that would sit on your desk. But they pretty much sound almost identical to the plugin. So, aside from those things, I use plug-in instruments for that, but they're pretty much recreations of the original thing.
I was to say the Prophet 5.
The
The
Prophet 5 is
the cars, man, like I absolutely love the sound of that synthesizer. It's yeah, I mean, I feel like that can be really difficult and expensive to try to hunt all that stuff down. And if
it
you
is.
have one piece of equipment that gets close enough to honing in on those sounds and being able to replicate them, I feel like like on your end from that production standpoint, especially being able to allocate more time to the creative process, it's like, where am I willing to like make these concessions, make these compromises? Like what sounds unique and authentic enough versus, some of those bad drum programs that you can incorporate into your sounds. Is there any part of you down the road that thinks you might adventure into using any of that stuff? Like, is there any part of you that like maybe a side project outside of Oberon Rose, or just like call it solo work, if you will? But I mean, is there a part of you that wants to like go further down that road with electronics, or are you really just like, this is where you're at, this is where your heart is, and this is how you want to make music?
Electronic music has never really appealed to me too much. I do appreciate certain things that I hear. I mean, if I think of electronic music that I like, it's still more rock based, like Radiohead or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't. I don't know enough about it. I don't really know how to go about creating that stuff, to be honest with you. I write songs by sitting down with my guitar and coming up with a riff or a progression that starts to sound like something to me, and I'll start writing melodies to it. That's my process, really. So like, that's a whole other way of going about songwriting, where you come up with parts on synthesizers and beats and stuff like that. And I've never worked that way. I don't know enough about it, and I don't listen to it enough. I like I said, the only thing I listen to that does that would be Radiohead, and they're still more rock oriented. I mean, they'll still combine drums, or I mean, I don't know if you would consider Prince doing that. I mean, I'm a huge Prince fan too, but
Love him.
so he of course used the drum machine a lot, but he used the drum machine, but a lot of times he doubled the drum machine with a real drum kit, and Radiohead kind of does that too. But Prince is something that we can fantasize about being that much of a genius, but he's just in his own league, so he was able to do whatever he wanted to do.
Well, as another guy, Peter Silberman with the Antlers. I don't know if you listen to them at all, but their new album Blight, I feel like that's something that he does a lot. You get that live percussion mixed with the programming.
Yeah.
That's a cool record. If you haven't checked that out, I'd give that a go. But he's out of New York. You're talking about your process, talking about like the origins of this project, mm-hmm. your partnership with Rebecca. I'm interested in all of that. Okay. How you guys ended up meeting, like what was it about her that you felt that there was potential with this partnership? Because I think it's really unique the way that she's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she's pretty much writing the lyrics, you're doing the music, and then she does perform with you live though. She does keyboards and some of the synth elements.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
And all right. Backing vocals on, she started singing backing vocals on the last record, Purple, Blue, and Crimson. She continued that on this record. And on this record, she has a little featured spot on one of the songs. So I'm slowly giving her more and more spotlights on the record. So
No, I love that. I mean, your harmonies sound great. I really enjoy that aspect of your
cool,
music.
cool.
I think the two of you sound great together. So the information that I could find on your bio, you guys met in New York. Are you both from New York?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're both from New York. You were working as an intern, and what studios were you working at when you were in the city?
So I worked at this studio. It was on 9th Street, and like I forget now. It was a little bit off of a couple of blocks down from 42nd Street, but all the way over on 9th Street. It was called M and I, and it was two brothers that ran it, and it had they had a smaller studio that was just Pro Tools, and they had a larger room that still had 2-inch tape and analog board and all that stuff. So it was great to you know uh, get to work on that stuff. And I was just an assistant engineer, and so I did random stuff like you know make coffee, go out and get sandwiches, or you know, align the tape machine, um, yeah, help set up in the microphones and stuff like that. The usual assistant job, and we recorded mainly like we did a lot of TV spots and some TV shows that still used you know studio guys for their backing. Um, and it was the creative side. It was mostly independent jazz stuff.
Okay.
So it was really interesting to see, and this was really interesting for me because coming from um, you know rock music where it's like yeah you might cut the basics live, but most of the time it's like you get the drums, you get the basics live, and then you do overdubs. Um, for jazz records, it's all just done live.
Yeah, it's one of
And
my favorite things about it.
yeah, and the mix is just done in they mix themselves. So you're really just, I mean, I remember when the guy came in, one guy came in to mix some record. He was a piano jazz guy. I can't remember who it was, but he was a jazz pianist, and it was just a trio, him and a bass player and a drummer, and they cut, I don't know, 5 tracks in a day, in an afternoon, and it ran about 35-40 minutes, and then he came back a couple of days later to mix the whole thing, in one afternoon. So it was just like 2 days of being in the studio, and it's just so simple. It was amazing, so it I developed a deeper appreciation of jazz just from doing that. I'm definitely not a big jazz guy, but I do like, some of the classic stuff like Miles Davis and some Pharoah Sanders and stuff like that. But, I'm not a jazz connoisseur at all. I hardly know anything about it. But, yeah, that was the main one that I worked at.
And so how did you end up meeting Rebecca?
So we met just basically through mutual friends originally, and we just became good friends, and then we started dating, and we really had no idea of working together creatively, because at that time she was exploring acting, and I was already in some band stuff. So it wasn't until later that when I started to write my own material and just try to do my own stuff, that she would have these like random like poems that would be like just a verse or something that she'd give me, and I would end up using it in a song. And I lyrics were never the easiest thing for me to write. I could come up with riffs and chord progressions like all day, but lyrics were always a little bit more of a challenge, and it's like, so it was a hit or miss, you know, where I'd come up with something really good, or I come up with something that was, you know, like, I don't know if that's quite it, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, lyrics are. It's hard to. I mean,
Yeah,
just the melodies themselves, like the flow of the words, the hooks that are there. I mean, all these things are important.
yeah. So she would give me stuff here and there, and I would incorporate it into a song. But then at a certain point, um, we wrote a couple more songs together deliberately, and we just decided to just make that a thing. You know, at a certain point, it was just like, well, maybe we should just do this together. You know, because well, I was already doing a lot. You know, I'm writing the music and melodies and arrangements and you know all that stuff. So it was nice to have some collaboration in there. You know, I never set out to be necessarily the guy who does everything. You know,
Mhm.
but it just turned out that way. And so yeah, that's we just started writing. It just gradually became more and more that we started to write together. Um, so
I guess that was kind of like where I was coming from as far as, and you answered the question that it evolved organically, but I didn't know if there was just like this magic moment where you guys just were immediately like, we need to make this happen, we need to collaborate, or
there sort of was. I mean, there sort of was, and when we wrote the song "Young Goodman Brown," which is on our first record, um, it it was kind of, you know, we were kind of like putting our toes in the water, so to speak, with the collaboration. But once we kind of did that song, because I think I had mentioned that I wanted to, because that's actually the title is a story, is a short story from Nathaniel Hawthorne,
Mhm.
uh, and it's just this weird little creepy New England type story. Um, but without going into that whole thing, I said I'd like to kind of like write a song about that little short story, but I had this song idea, and I wasn't intending necessarily that song to be it, but I had this song idea, and she said, "Let me write the lyrics to that." And you know, I got home one day, and she was just said, "I wrote lyrics to that song," and lo and behold, it was "Young Goodman Brown." So um, that is when we decided, like, all right, let's try to do this together. And she started to pick up the keyboards, and we did a couple of shows together, just her and I, around New York City at that point. But then we sort of moved out of New York City soon after that.
So were you working with a band at the time when you were writing those songs, or were you like in the headspace of putting out a solo project at that point?
I had kind of I had a band before that, and it kind of you know it kind of fell apart at a certain point because I had people involved in it that sort of came through somebody else, and it didn't really feel right, and so I kind of let it go. Um, so I didn't really know what I was doing at that point, you know. And so when we decided to do this together, it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You know, it just happened at the right time. You know?
Do you guys have a? I mean, now that you've been doing this for so long, I mean, eh, do you have kind of like a set way to approach the songwriting process, or is it just kind of whoever comes up with an idea and then you roll with it? I mean, does she pen lyrics and then you write music, or I mean, is like everything kind of fair game with the creative process with you guys?
Well, it is in a sense that we don't put any limits on it, but for the most part, it usually originates with me coming up with some sort of song idea, you know, whether it's a riff or some chords that sound good together for some reason, and inspires me enough to try to write a melody to it. It's something that moves me in some way. So I'll do that, and I'll develop the idea a little bit. Like I'll just hum like the melody and maybe come up with a chorus or a bridge or some other parts to kind of like really kind of write the song musically without words, and then kind of give it to her, and then she'll write lyrics, and then it might change from there. Sometimes there were times where I gave her a song idea and she wrote lyrics to it, and I'm singing it back to her, and she's like, that's not right. That's like too soft. It's supposed to be like she was hearing it like harder, and so like things might change at that point. There was another song where she wrote lyrics to a piece of music. Like for instance, there's a song on that album, Holographic Blues, where the song Upside Down World, where that music was, she wrote lyrics to it, which were the lyrics to Sinner, the first song on the album. And I was just like, I don't know if these lyrics really work with the music. I kind of hear those lyrics differently. Like when she presented them to me, when I read them, I was like, I kind of hear it like this. And I was just like, I started singing the verse of what that song is. And so I just sort of wrote another song. So in a way, her lyrics came first for that song, but it wasn't intentional. It just happened. And then she wrote new lyrics for the music that would become Upside Down World. So, we got 2 songs out of that process,
So I love just like, yeah, like the idea of like, you're basically like in the editing room. I mean, just, hey, like this soundbite doesn't fit here. We can plug it in here. The flexibility. And I feel like that's just part of what's fun about the creative process. I mean, I even do that when I write album reviews. It's like, sometimes I'll like take a paragraph and flip it up top, because I think that whatever I'm talking about or whatever point I'm making is just, it's better to lead off with that. I feel like it's more engaging, whatever it might be. So I wanted to ask you this. I was curious because you said you're not that great of a drummer, but you sound pretty damn good on everything else on this record. Especially, man, like some of the bass licks that you lay down on this thing are outstanding. A Long Longing, like I really love what you're doing with the bass on that particular song on the record. What was the first instrument that you played? I mean, was it the guitar, or did you start off doing something else and shift into that? Like how did this kind of develop, your love for music and just becoming a musician?
Guitar was always my first love.
All right.
So I had a neighbor who he was a few years older than me, who handed me Jimi Hendrix Are You Experienced when I was very young. And I really didn't understand anything on it except for Purple Haze and Fire, but because those were like just probably the most commercial songs in there. But in my like, I don't know, 9-year-old brain, I couldn't fathom, I Don't Live Today or something like that.
Right.
Pretty heavy music, but the guitar playing was just like, it blew my mind. So, and I just fell in love with guitar, electric guitar mainly, just because the sound of it is just, to me, it's like one of the most transcendent sounds created by humans.
Mm-hmm.
It can be earthy and it could be from outer space. It's so diverse and expressive and the most amazing thing. But So I started out on guitar, and I really had no desire to be a singer either. I was painfully shy. The last thing I wanted to do was go out in front of band. I was never that personality, that big frontman personality. So it wasn't until years later that when I was in a band, one of my first bands, that was like semi-pro, that I started to, I was already writing songs and stuff, and I started to not really like what my singer was doing, and I started to get tired of the lead singer kind of personality in a way, So I thought, well, because then at that point also I was just hopelessly obsessed with John Lennon. So, I couldn't, I well, not I couldn't, but I started to really sort of he became my biggest inspiration at that point. You know what I mean? So he inspired me to write my own songs and start singing them. And so I kind of learned how to sing by trying to sing his songs. And so I kind of graduated into singing my own songs. And actually, at first it was singing backing vocals. But then singing my own songs. And then, as time progressed and I started to try putting together my own bands and my own projects and stuff, and making my own demos, that's when I started to play around with bass. And just one day I said, well, I learned how to sing by singing, Beatles songs and mainly John songs. So why don't I learn how to play all the Sgt. Pepper songs on bass?
All the Paul songs, yeah.
Bass player, and so that's what I did. And I basically learned every song. I can't do it now because that was years ago, but I learned every song. I was able to play the whole album straight through on bass. The only annoying thing was, when they would use the vary speed and change the tuning on the bass. But other than that, I learned all those songs and taught myself how to play melodic bass that also knows how to groove a little bit. So, yeah.
I'm glad you brought them up because I would say, The Sun Stood Still, more than your other records, I feel has that kind of pop element to it. It does have this underlying feel of the Beatles. I mean, I would say from start to finish, and the continuity of the record too. I really love the movement of this thing. I feel like the tracks, the way they're laid out, come together extremely well. I like the buildup. I feel like previous efforts, you guys came out pretty hot and then kind of settled in. And I like the way that this thing kind of just slowly builds. It kind of has this cool little pace to it.
Yeah, that's the unique thing about this record. That's, earlier when you asked me what I did to sort of make it different than the last records, that is one of the things that I think sets it apart, is the fact that it starts off a little softer, and that song in and of itself kind of builds up. It kind of, opens up more and more as the song goes on. What's interesting about that song is musically, each part that follows the next, even though we might go back to a verse, it's never the same as what it was before. It's like the first verse comes in and it's, just voice and guitar. And then on the second verse, it's voice and more guitar, more like with like a picking style.
Mm-hmm.
And then that goes into another part, and then each part is like a gradual build, and it never sort of repeats. Even though you might do another verse, it's different than the way the verse was last time, musically. And so that was kind of the idea with the album too, to have a flow that was, with some good peaks and some good valleys, like where I like, I don't like to write the same type of song, uh, 9 or 10 times on an album, or 8 times. I like to have each song sort of be something, and that is something I guess I sort of got out of, being, so inspired by the Beatles, where it's like really no song is like another, unless you're talking about the early stuff. No song is really like the last one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of eclectic, and by no means am I comparing my writing to theirs. I mean, but I try to do that. I try to give everything its own thing, and like so, with a song like "Back to You," I don't want to have another song that's out, that is kind of repeat that.
I mean, that's another track with a great bass lick on it too. I really I enjoy that track. I like just there's a lot of great classic elements that I'm hearing on this record. The harmonies, there's this kind of chamber pop sensibility to the record that I've really enjoyed. Some of the kind of like droning organ elements too. I don't those are just synthesizers, right? You're not actually playing an organ on any of these tracks, or
some there's a lot of organ on it. I mean,
okay, perfect, all right.
But it is a virtual instrument organ. It's not. I don't have a B3 in the corner, but it the way it's used in my productions, it works for me to do it that way, because again, they're kind of organs and the synths. They are secondary to the guitar, so the guitar and the voice are always the main focus point, because that's what I mainly do. So yeah.
I mean, it's funny because people people see that you guys are in Nashville now, and I feel like there's the comparisons with with country artists, but like this record, there's such an array of fun tones that you're playing with. Like I love, like there's riffs that are jangly. It kind of reminds me of like Johnny Marr with the Smiths, or like Peter Buck a little bit with REM. Like I love that element of it.
Mm-hmm.
I love some of the kind of like desert rock and surf rock tones that you play around with a bit on the record. Like there's a great array of sounds, a great array of guitar tones that you're working with on this record that I think give it so much life and give it so much diversity. And again, like I applaud you for the way that you bring all of those styles together, because it can be hard being that adventurous, I feel like, in creating something that feels like everything's, that everything belongs, like nothing's anachronistic, so to speak.
Yeah. Thank you. I definitely really enjoy exploring different guitar tones, and I think it's important to have different sounds. I like different sounds. I like unusual sounds. I like to sort of create depth around sound as much as I can. So I have a variety of guitars that in my collection. I have a couple of different amps, and a bunch of pedals, and I get most of the sounds just in the room. It's really hardly any of it's done in post-production. I mean, most of it's recorded that way. I mean, that's how I do it. I don't save a lot of it for the mix. I pretty much create the mix as I'm building the song, and then so when I get to the mix, there's already a rough mix. It already sounds almost done. It's just a matter of leveling things out relative to each other, and making sure everything is EQ'd properly if it needs to change in a way, maybe adding a little reverb. There's always add reverb and a little delay or something to the voice, but unless I want to do something really far out. But yeah, I pretty much get all those tones in the room and record it that way for the most part, unless there's like sometimes there's things that I know will just sound better if I maybe compress it more on the software end of it, at the mix stage. Like I know like this will, this sound will really sound better doing the compression after it's recorded. Sometimes there's things like that, but I like to play around with sounds and get different textures and things like that.
I did want to ask you because I feel like your sound in general is just that very guitar driven classic style of rock and roll. Did you have a go-to combination of guitar and amp that like you really just found yourself working more with on this record?
Well, my main guitar for years has been a Telecaster, just because I tend to get the sounds that I'm looking for mostly out of it.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, the Epiphone Casino has ended up on a lot more tracks than you would think. But I honestly, it's I don't favor one thing over another. It's really a matter of as I'm working and I'm sort of in the flow of getting the sound, I'm sort of determining what it should sound like on the spot. So I might try my Fender amp first and try playing it through that and seeing how it sounds, and then I might think, well, how would it sound through this other amp? How would it sound through the Marshall? And I kind of just make those decisions on the spot. I kind of play around a little bit and see how it sounds in different things. Not all the time, because sometimes I just know, or sometimes maybe I wrote the riff on that using that amp. You know what I mean? Like the song, the title track, the song Stood Still. I came up with that riff playing the telly through my Marshall with just my reverb pedal on, and that's how I came up with that riff. So that whole sound was at the very beginning stage of that thing, so I just did that. You know what I mean? I didn't change it because it was there from the beginning. Other songs, or another one was actually funny enough, Back to You, that riff was just some random thing I played before, like, we were getting ready to go somewhere, and I had like, half hour or something while she was getting ready and we were about to go out. So I was just like jamming by myself, just playing some stuff, and I just randomly blurted out that riff, just playing my telly through my Fender amp. But in the end, it sounded better through the Marshall. So there you go. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just whatever sounds good. It's kind of like I'm hearing something in my head. What sounds closest to that? That's really what it is.
100%. I've been really curious as well too, because you guys left arguably one of the better music cities, I would say maybe in the world, to go to one that is very high up there as well. I mean, people are going to have different opinions as far as Nashville and New York, but what inspired that move? Was it because you guys, when did you start releasing your records? Thou Art Records is your label. When did you start releasing your albums under your own label?
Okay, so the first out, it's kind of convoluted a little bit. So we started our thing really in New York City, and then we moved up to Woodstock, New York, and we wrote and recorded the first album up there. Um, and then we had an opportunity to move to Connecticut because we kind of couldn't deal with the Catskill winters anymore.
Yeah.
So we did one or two of them, and we were just like, this is too much, you know. And so we had a relative who had a house in Connecticut that was like, you could stay there, you know, as long as you like. And so we moved there, and so we put out the first album. That was 2012, and so we put out the first album then. And so we were kind of new to the area and didn't know anybody. And I thought I was moving to like a home. Yeah, who's going to be around here that's like play with, you know? But it turns out it was a pretty artsy, somewhat bohemian area, and I was able to put a band together. And so for, you know, that happened maybe after living there for 2 years, so maybe around 2014, I started to. The band got together and we started to play, and so I had written half of the next album already, but it was just like we weren't focusing on recording; we were just focusing on getting out and playing, and so we were kind of getting that live band started at that point, and that's why there's such a big gap, because then the band played for, you know, we gigged around the Northeast for about, I don't know, 3 years or something before the next one came out. The next one came out in 2018.
Yeah. Tell me all about it.
Yeah. So there was a long gap, but it was the first album was almost premature to put out, but I don't know if premature is the right word, but it was just really before we had anything set up in a way. And I really wanted to start playing shows again, focusing on that. And so the recorded stuff was really just put on the back burner until we felt like we needed to do it. But there was a couple of false starts with that record as well. But I think we made an attempt to start it in 2014. And then I kind of put it aside. And then when I hooked up with a drummer in 2015, we started recording, and then we just kind of took our time recording it. And it was probably done in 2017, but it didn't actually come out until 18. So that's how that started. And then ever since then, we've kind of been doing every other year something new. But we're going to try to, now that I've streamlined my process a little more, you know, we're going to try to do something once a year, have some new music once a year.
I was going to say, you guys have been insanely prolific the last 7 years. I mean, it feels like every other year there's great new music that's
yeah. I mean, there was a day when bands would do 2 albums a year, right? You know, now it's like 2 albums a decade. You know, it's just, or maybe not that small, but you know, I mean,
it's a fascinating thing, right? I mean, like I would say that if you're just like in one of those moments where the momentum is there and creatively you feel unstoppable, I would say go for it. I mean, like off the top of my head, I just think of a guy like Willie Nelson, who I think Willie Nelson has put out a record about it's like 9 or 10 months. Like you get a record like within under a year for like the last 7 decades, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just insane. And I know that some of them are covers, you know, albums of covers, and, you know, there's, you know, other projects, collaborations, whatever they might be. But yeah, I mean, I would say that everybody's process is different, you know, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, if it took that time in between those first 2 records, playing those live shows to dial that in, and especially now that you're, you know, more comfortable with the process as a whole, you know, I feel like that is, you know, it just expedites so much already in that regard. You know, you know what you can go, and you're not, I guess you're not playing around with the production angles as much. Like, you know how things want to sound, you know how to make them sound that way, so you just go in there and do it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Um, you know, I mean, I do like things that, you know, I am a fan of you know, some more experimental stuff, but y- I'm also aware, you know, you really can't force stuff. You know, I mean, it kind of really has to be like, since we're not answering to a label or something, you know, it's more important for me for the work to be inspired, you know, rather than getting something else out on time because that's when the label wants it, you know. And that's why I think, you know, in the past, some of our favorite artists have put out things that were like, I don't know what they were thinking on that record. Um, because, you know, they had to make something, you know, they're under contract, they had to put something out, and that was the best they had. And, you know, they're only human. It's not necessarily going to be as good as the last thing, you know. There's no guarantee that your next idea is going to be any good, you know. And so sometimes you know, our favorite artists will put something out, and you're like, well, aside from that one song, you know, it's kind of the rest is, you know, forgettable, you know. Um, so I really just try to keep myself inspired and uh, try to put out music that is inspired, you know, stuff that I want to put out, you know, that I feel good about. You know, it's not, I'm not being told that it has to be put out, you know.
Would you say that you're feeling that inspiration more in Nashville than you did in New York or in Connecticut?
I wouldn't say more, but I would say it's different. You know, this town is very different than any other place I've lived in terms of what the music community is like. New York is just so big and so vast. There's, yeah, you have a music scene, but you also have the financial district, and there's, you know, every other business you could think of is in New York. You know, it's like it doesn't just revolve around one thing. It's like there's millions of things going on at once in New York, and so, you know, you find the little uh, independent music thing, and you know, it's its own little bubble and within this greater thing. Here in Nashville, the whole, you know, the whole city is based on it. It's kind of like there's two main industries here. It's the healthcare industry and the music industry. You know, every other building is like a medical clinic, you know, or you know, or it's like, you know, or it's the music business, you know. So um, it's different in the sense that you're kind of, it's in your face more. You know, your competition is a little more in your face, and you start to meet people. Like most of the people I've met down here so far are professional musicians that play with either legacy artists or um, you know, some, you know, relatively newer artists that they're you know, they're hired by to play guitar or drums or anything. Like for instance, our drummer who played on our record is on tour right now with another thing, and so it's like this kind of thing where, you know, you hook up with musicians, but you know, they got a million other things, a million other projects that they're doing. I've never really ventured into that world myself as being a hired gun or anything. It was never a really an interest of mine. I've always just wanted to write songs and play my own music, um, but yeah, so it's different in that sense. So it's, and there's a lot of songwriting and stuff that goes on down here, and so it's a little more in your face, you know, and especially, you know, in a place like Connecticut, there's basically just little, you know, in the it's not even on the map, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So like we would play when we were up there, we would play New York still, we would play Boston and the surrounding areas of Boston, um, and we did some stuff in Rhode Island, and you know, and there is a bunch of places in Connecticut itself to play, but it's way more just local, independent kind of vibe there. So down here, it's like it's the music business, you know, and so you're sort of it's in your face all the time, you know, where you're the competition is not, you know, the dude in the other local band. The competition is like, well, what is, you know, Columbia Records putting out? You know what I mean? So I don't really think of it necessarily when we're working on stuff, but it's just the way the city is. It's already kind of it's always present. So it kind of ups your game a little bit.
Well, I'd say that's probably the biggest hurdle for artists like you right now too. That there's technology's come such a long way to where you can handle the production element, you can handle the engineering aspect of it from seriously your own home. I mean, it's become that streamlined, but there's still that element of getting it out there, of getting people to find it, of getting it in front of people. I mean, do you think that Nashville has been better with regards to the live aspect of what you love to do and getting more people to discover your music?
Not really. It's somewhat harder because there's a lot more competition. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, it's just there is an endless stream of singer songwriters that just have stars in their eyes, and they're going for the big thing, and we're not really going for that. You know, like we just do what we do. You know, we just write the music we like, and you know, the this kind of music, you know, it made the industry. You know, this style of, you know, sort of pop rock or whatever you want to call it. It's what made the industry what it is, but it's not really it's kind of, you know, it's been squashed now. It's, you know, it's not the main thing anymore. You know, you have so many other, you know, with hip hop and dance pop and all that kind of stuff, which is mainly what majors do. So, you know, that's out of the question. And plus, the deals that majors offer these days are not even worth it. So, you know, and then the deals that you get from indie labels aren't really worth it either because they don't really give you any money. So,
Yeah.
and I hate to bring money into it, but that's really that is as an indie artist, that is the biggest hurdle is the financial end of it.
Well, I was to say, you got to be able to flip the switch and plug in your amps and do all those things. Like
Yeah,
it's, you're not gunning for a massive level of opulence, but you still got to keep the roof over your head.
exactly.
Well, we're closing in on the hour. I've been trying to see if do you guys have any tour dates in support of The Sun Stood Still right now? Are you guys playing just shows around the Nashville area, or do you guys have any upcoming plans in the coming months for that?
So we're looking at that. We haven't really done any extensive touring yet, but we are looking at that, and we have you know, consulted some good people on that. But the first order of business is we have set up we're doing a live video shoot, which hopefully we'll be able to springboard off of that. And so that's going to be done in a month or two. We're going to be shooting that. It's going to be 3 songs from the album, and it's just going to be totally live in a studio. So it's going to have good audio quality, but it'll be 100% live. And we just got to wait for our drummer to come back from tour, and then we'll be able to hit it, and hopefully that will you know, grow into something else. Because, you know, down here, that's one main difference down here is holding a band together is doesn't work down here. Everyone is playing in a million different things, and everyone's getting hired to go play, you know, and do some dates and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, you know, you have to really line stuff up. So with that said, we have that lined up, and so hopefully from that we'll be able to get more live dates coming following that.
Well, I'm looking forward to that information whenever you get it. So my family actually lives in Woodstock, Georgia, which is probably like 2.5 hours from where you're at. So I would love to be able to line up a family visit and then drive up to see you guys live.
Oh, that'd be
And
fun.
any of those gigs that you're playing in the area. I did also want to thank you and Rebecca very much for sending me a copy of the Sun Stood Still. Um, I enjoyed the record so much, but I feel like the compression that you get with Bandcamp files and just I would say streaming in general. I'm really excited to hear the quality of what you do from a production standpoint on that wax. Like it's, listening to this record in the last couple of weeks and getting ready for this conversation. It's I can't thank you enough for that. I want to let everybody know that I'll post the link to the band's website so that you guys can jump on there. You can order that record, and you guys have all of your records available on vinyl and CD, correct?
All of them are on CD except for the first record. Our first record, One Divine Day, is only available as download. Every other record is available on CD. Purple, Blue, and Crimson is available on CD, record, and cassette. The Sun Stood Still is available on CD and LP. And Tell Me All About It is also available on CD and cassette. So we ventured into the cassette thing a little bit,
I love that it's making a comeback too.
Yeah. So, if that's your thing, we have cassettes for some of the records. But I'd like to get the other records on LP as well. I think because I definitely, when I'm creating the record, I think of the album format. That's just my favorite format. It's it's how I've always preferred to listen to music. So it works really well on record. So I just mailed out your record today. So you should be getting it.
Man, I'm thrilled. I can't wait to drop it on the table and drop the needle on it. We're pretty much out of time here, my friend. I really appreciate you joining me this evening. I want to give you the floor. So anything else that you want to close this thing up with? Anything else you'd like to say? And then we'll call it a night.
Well, just thanks for having me on and getting to talk about this stuff and, highlighting the record. And I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure too. Yeah. I want to trying to get my schedule in order too with this new job that I was telling you about, but I would love to do a review of the Sun Stood Still so that people just have some more information and some more insight on it, because I think it really is a fantastic record. Everybody, Tommy Oberon from Oberon Rose, thank you for joining us tonight. And I want all of you to just stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully there's more interviews throughout the rest of the year and the following year to come. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Tommy, have a good one.
Thank you. You too.